Well, but it's a pretty good budget. It's we recognise the volatile times in the global economy. This is a pretty sensible budget. It shows some real confidence in New Zealand's future. We've worked pretty hard to increase the growth potential of the economy despite some pretty strong headwinds from around the world. New Zealanders have done well through the recession. They've been resilient. They've stuck to it. They've changed their habits. They're saving more. They're spending carefully. And we're just on the long, difficult path out of what's been a pretty unique recession.
Yes. Now, haven't we done well, New Zealand? Apparently, we've navigated through this recession very, very well. According to Bill English there, talking, in fact, this morning on TV3 about his budget that he delivered yesterday. If you didn't realise, there was a budget delivered yesterday. If you've been under a rock somewhere, people are calling it the zero budget. To analyse it with us this morning from livenews.co.nz, it is Selwyn Manning. Good morning, Selwyn.
Yeah, good morning, Glenn.
And if many people are calling it the zero budget, what would you call it?
I'd call it a miserable budget, Glenn.
Oh, crikey. A miserable budget. And just, I think, guess to set the tone for this one, I don't think we'll be talking about the hike in taxes on cigarettes very much, because I think that's a smokescreen for the mainstream media, and they've gladly picked it up. It's all over the front pages as like that's the big deal of the budget. It's not the big deal, is it, Selwyn?
No, it isn't. I mean, some of the issues in here that I take exception to really is the talking up of the government's talking up of, a move to have all of New Zealand shouldering the burden of getting New Zealand back to surplus. It really talked up the fact that it was going to put something in this budget to close a tax loophole that has been exploited by those who are fairly privileged in the country, mainly, the second homes, the holiday homes, the batches and the yachts being used in some way to offset one's income so that they get a tax return in quite considerable numbers. Now, that was what we were expecting. We were expecting that to be basically a cornerstone, really, in some ways. If Bill English was going to maintain a centrist type of position, then that could have been a way that kind of spread a flavour through. Even if he was going to be bold, some move back to a more equitable kind of expression of the progressive taxation regime. And what I mean by that is, remember that the very wealthy got significant tax cuts back in 2010, and it's been costing the country millions and millions and millions of dollars, and ever since. The government has had to borrow at record numbers to basically balance its books. Now that tax cut, if it was reversed in a sense, could have gone quite a long way to putting more equity back into that taxation system. If you look at what the government is saving, yes, it did move on closing that loophole that we just mentioned, with the batches and the yachts, etc. But it saves the government $107 million over a 4-year period. If you look at what it did yesterday by closing off tax credits for people who are going back into work, who need to get childcare for the children or home help for the elderly, etc., etc. It's cancelled those tax credits. So the government is saving itself $117 million over the 4 years. So, the numbers just don't stack up. It does a little bit of tinkering around the edges, to meet its rhetoric that it's going to get the wealthy to come in and help shoulder the burden instead of getting away scot-free. While it actually, it's trivial numbers in a sense. And then it canes those who are trying to get back into work, to try and actually afford to get back into work, that transition back to work kind of area. Once again, those people are caned and taken away any incentive to basically get there. I just think in that respect it's very miserable, Glenn.
What about, talking about miserable, and you just mentioned people trying to get back into work, what about the people, the young people who are just starting work, starting part-time jobs, like paper runs? They're now going to be taxed. I used to do a paper run, and I do remember this feeling, well, actually the government acknowledges that I'm not actually earning a whole heck of a lot, and they want to get people this experience of earning money even while they're at school. So they were giving us these rebates, and they are tiny rebates in the big scheme of things. and how miserly and miserable. I think you're right. The word is miserable about this.
It is miserable. I mean, in some ways, most of the world is trying to get away from exploiting children in the workforce. In some ways, New Zealand allows, like the paper run, etc., etc., and then that's fair enough. But to come in and actually take the tax credit away for those kids, I mean, that is miserable in a sense. The other thing that is really concerning, once again, those families that are trying to actually, through work, get themselves into a better state. And we saw evidence of this being shown on TV this week as well, where we had a family who the mother is already working flat out. She's got one of her young youths that is kind of in the night after secondary school is going and working as a cleaner and all of that type of thing. Now, this whole kind of thing that has been adjusted in this budget canes that family even more. And that's what really worries me. On one side, we have laws where kids and children cannot stay at home alone, and fair enough for that law. On the other thing, the government on this budget has come out and actually whacked them around the face and says, we're going to actually take money off you anyway. So, and to me it puts in mixed messages, and it forces families into those families who cannot afford home help, if we go back to that point, to risk leaving the kids home alone without childcare. I mean, that's the kind of thing that this budget actually risks. If we go back to the big picture, though, I'm just looking at the numbers here. Forecast in February, the Treasury forecast in February was that we would have a deficit of $12.1 billion. Now, the government's deficit announcement, its forecast at the budget yesterday, was that's dropped down significantly, more than a third, to $8.4 billion. The government argued that the difference between that deficit, which is huge numbers here, is that the delay in the Christchurch rebuild is actually not showing in. So what I'm talking about there, it's like, the money that has been expected to go toward rebuilding Christchurch is being deferred. And you kind of got to wonder then, is the government actually deliberately trying to actually delay the rebuild of Christchurch to a degree where it's like paying over the next 4 years, delaying those payments in a sense. And I kind of have concerns around that. I think kind of sometimes we've been wondering, why is the government not actually moving on some of the areas that are reticent to actually, like insurance areas, reticent to actually get stuck in Christchurch and do something for the families there. I know there's a lot of work going on down there, but still it's been slow. And I just wonder if there is a deliberate thing here. It's almost like a hire purchase type of agreement coming into play.
Well, is it political? Is it delaying it to the second or third year of this term so that there's a good feeling towards the end of this national term?
Well,